What's going on, everyone? It's Jay from Dex Quest here, and today we've got a huge batch of Pokemon Winds and Waves news to go over. But interestingly enough, I think the biggest story isn't even about Pokemon Winds and Waves. A few days ago, the Pokemon Company trademarked something called Pokemon Spot. At first, everyone thought this was going to be a brand new Pokemon game. Turns out, it wasn't. But funny enough, Pokemon Spot may have accidentally revealed something much bigger. Alongside that trademark, a brand new project known internally as Project P30 has surfaced, and if the leaks are accurate, it could end up being one of Pokemon's biggest projects for the franchise's 30th anniversary. On top of that, we've got a new clue surrounding one of the main companions in Pokemon Winds and Waves, another rumor suggesting the Generation 10 starters could appear before the game's even release, and a possible tease for when we will finally meet the legendary Pokemon. We've got a lot to talk about, so let's jump right into it. But before we do, if you're excited for Pokemon Winds and Waves and all things Pokemon, make sure to subscribe. My goal is to hit 1,000 subscribers before Pokemon Winds and Waves release. We have a long road leading to the release of Winds and Waves, and I'd love to have you along for the journey. Now, let's get into it. Let's start with Pokemon Spot. As I mentioned, Pokemon Spot turned out to be an arcade collaboration exclusive to China. Cool? Sure. But probably not what most of us were hoping for. Here's where things get interesting though. During all this, another internal Pokemon project was uncovered. Right now, it's simply being referred to as Project P30. Now, the name alone doesn't tell us much, but considering next year marks Pokemon's 30th anniversary, it's pretty easy to see why people think P30 stands for Project 30. However, the reason people are paying attention to this isn't just because of the name. It's because according to the leak, Shigeru Omori is overseeing the project. And that's a pretty big deal. Omori has played a major role in several mainline Pokemon games over the years. So when his name gets attached to an unknown project, it's hard not to wonder if this is something much larger than another mobile app or arcade game. Now, what could Project P30 actually be? The first thing that came to mind for me was a classic Pokemon collection. People have been asking for older Pokemon games on modern hardware for years, and if there was ever a time to celebrate the franchise's history, Pokemon's 30th anniversary feels like the perfect opportunity. Whether that's the original Game Boy games, the Game Boy Advance titles, or some kind of larger collection, I'd be completely on board. Another possibility is that Project P30 isn't actually one game at all. It could simply be the internal name for Pokemon's entire 30th anniversary initiative. Think of it like a folder. Inside that folder could be Pokopia DLC, classic game releases, Pokemon home updates, special events, and maybe even something we haven't heard about yet. That would also explain why we only discovered the codename while digging through information connected to Pokemon Spot. Of course, without official confirmation, we're still speculating. But I do think one thing is worth pointing out. Pokemon Spot ended up being a relatively small project. Project P30 doesn't sound small. If Omori really is attached to it, I think it's safe to expect something with a bit more weight behind it. Next up, we finally get to talk about Pokemon Winds and Waves. We may have gotten our first clue about one of the main companions in Pokemon Winds and Waves. A few weeks ago, credible leaker Ball Guy claimed that we'd have 3 friends traveling alongside us throughout the story. One detail that stood out was that one of these companions comes from Kanto. At the time, that didn't really narrow things down, but now? A fan posted on X that they hoped this Kanto character would actually be related to someone we already know. Ball Guy replied to that post with a photo of Lieutenant Surge and Raichu. Now, that doesn't confirm anything, but if it was intended as a hint, it certainly seems like this companion has some sort of connection to Lieutenant Surge. Whether that's his son, his daughter, or maybe even someone he trained, we'll have to wait and see. Now here's where I think things get interesting. Pikachu's evolution line almost always ends up receiving special treatment whenever Pokemon introduces a major new mechanic. Pikachu got a Gigantamax form, Cantonian Raichu has 2 Mega Evolutions from Pokemon Legends ZA, and Alolan Raichu became a regional evolution, one of the first, in fact, if not the first that was revealed to us. Game Freak clearly likes revisiting this evolution line. Of course, it's the franchise mascot. So if Winds and Waves introduces another major battle mechanic, which we've already got leaks about the Majin gimmick, I wouldn't be surprised if Alolan Raichu receives something new as well. It already fits the tropical surfing aesthetic we've seen throughout Winds and Waves, so I'd feel like it'd be a natural choice. Now, to be clear, that's just my own prediction. The leak itself doesn't actually mention Alolan Raichu, but I do think it's a fun possibility. Another fun possibility is the recent Pokopia rumor. According to one leaker, Pokopia's third DLC could introduce the Generation 10 starters before Winds and Waves actually release. However, it would only be the base forms, not their evolutions. Now, before you dismiss that idea, Pokemon has actually done things like this before. Ho-Oh appeared before Generation 2, Munchlax showed up before Diamond and Pearl, Lucario was featured in a Generation 3 movie, Bonsly appeared early in that movie, even Terapagos made an appearance before Scarlet and Violet's story fully unfolded. There were a lot of rumors that there would be a Generation 10 Pokemon featured in Pokemon Horizons, and with one of the main characters having a Pokeball, which we don't know what's inside of it, the chances are still there, but with what I'm hearing, it seems like things are very weird over there. They are shifting very, very frequently. So it's very possible that they took out the whole idea of revealing a Gen 10 Pokemon within Horizons, and instead putting the Gen 10 starters in Pokopia. Or we get both. To somewhat boost the credibility of this rumor, if you've been following recent leaks, you'll remember we also saw trademarks for the Generation 10 starters just a few days ago. At first, that seemed a little early, but if these starters are really planned for Pokopia, those trademarks suddenly make a lot more sense. Again, nothing official yet, but it would be a really clever way to build excitement before Winds and Waves release. And finally, we may also have another hint about when we'll see the game's legendary Pokemon. A fan on X pointed out that both Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet revealed their mascot legendaries during their second major trailers. A leaker responded to this with what appears to reference February 27th, 2027. That's a lot of 27s. And that would land on Pokemon Day. Obviously, I mean, who would have guessed? If that's correct, it makes perfect sense. Pokemon Day has become the biggest celebration of the franchise every year, and revealing the mascot legendaries there would be the perfect way to kick off the final stretch of marketing. Of course, there's always a chance we get another trailer before then, but if we don't, Pokemon Day is the safest bet. Overall, it definitely feels like Pokemon news is starting to heat up. Project P30 has suddenly appeared out of nowhere, we're getting more Winds and Waves leaks, more trademarks, and more hints about what's coming next. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think Project P30 actually is? Do you think it's a classic Pokemon collection, something completely new, or do you think it's simply the internal name for Pokemon's entire 30th anniversary celebration? And while you're down there, let me know whether you think Ball Guy was teasing a connection to Lieutenant Surge or not. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to Dex Quest. Remember, the goal is 1,000 subscribers before Winds and Waves release. And every single subscriber gets us one step closer to that goal. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out.